What will happen when an unstoppable force will meet an immovable object? How is that even possible? If something is unstoppable, it should pass through, right? But the other object is immovable. This is the centuries-old Unstoppable Force Paradox. Today in this video, we will discuss how this paradox originated and what is the solution to this. Even though logically it seems impossible, yet it has a really interesting explanation. Stay tuned so that you don't miss out on anything. A paradox is a statement that is self-contradictory or contradicts one's anticipations. Although it appears to have solid reasoning but leads to a logically undesirable or self-contradictory conclusion. In short, a paradox is something conflicting yet interconnected. It is one of the most discussed and perplexing problems in physics. The Irresistible Force Paradox, also known as Immovable Object Paradox, is a philosophical paradox generally presented as what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. The paradox originated in China. It was derived from a Chinese narrative story about an unstoppable spear and an unbreakable shield. It was taken from the famous Chinese philosophical book named Han Feizi, which was written around the 3rd century BC. In this story, there was a blacksmith who was trying to sell his arms. He had a spear and a shield. He was an intelligent man and was pretty much skilled in marketing his products. Someone asked him about the strength of his spear. He replied saying that it could pierce any shield. Again, when he was asked about the power of the shield, he told the buyer that it could withstand all attacks and nothing can pierce through it. Sometimes we think we are the smart ones, but there are a few who are smarter than us. One intelligent man from the crowd asked him a tricky question that stunned the blacksmith. The wise man asked the blacksmith what would happen if he used his unstoppable spear to strike his unbreakable shield. The blacksmith was stumped and had no answer. Let's move a little more back in time. There is a similar story even in Greek mythology. The story of Tumasian fox and Laelaps. According to Greek mythology, the Tumasian fox can never be captured, and the dog Laelaps never misses its prey. Zeus, the god, sensed this paradox and converted both animals into static stars. They chase each other in the night sky. Sounds interesting. As we immerse deeper into this paradox, it seems greater than the cosmos. Let's define the unstoppable force and an immovable object without overloading our minds with all kinds of philosophical redefinitions. In layman's terms, an unstoppable force is a tremendous force, possibly more powerful and terrifying than an earthquake, that sweeps away anything that crosses its path, regardless of size or mass. Additionally, for this force to be unstoppable, the force should not deteriorate at any instance. Therefore, for the force to become unstoppable, it must contain infinite energy. Similarly, an immovable object should be unaffected by any force of any size, even an asteroid strike. Additionally, for this object to be immovable, it should not move from its original position. Logically, such an object must possess infinite mass or inertia to make it immovable. Taking these definitions of the immovable object and the unstoppable force into consideration, if the immovable object moves, then it no longer remains immovable. And if the force decreases acceleration or stops, then it is no longer an unstoppable force. Many distinct conflicts of interest may be compared to the paradox. They are unpleasant and perplexing at the same time. In the past, many answers to this paradox have been presented, and some were able to shed some insights on the subject, but none look to be benevolent. Dr. Christopher Laxor of Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles is a professor of philosophy. He asserted that there is no contradiction in this paradox. According to him, it is a false perplexity that occurs by choice once a mistake is used to determine a particular conclusion. Caxor states that if we put these two notions side by side, a force with infinite inertia would be defined as an immovable item whose momentum or motion cannot be changed in any way. It would cause an object travelling there to come to a halt, therefore making it an unstoppable force. Unfortunately, physics is not always so straightforward. Let's try to understand scientifically what Caxor means. Based on Einstein's principle of relativity, nothing is immovable and can never be truly immovable on Earth, as Earth is always in constant motion. If something isn't in motion, you can't make it move by putting a force on it. According to Newton's second law of motion, force is equal to mass multiplied by the acceleration of the object. Hence, all forces, including light, are unstoppable because they continually respond to the environment around them. The photons in light create a little change in our momentum. To prevent the momentum, either we must entirely avoid light or become translucent. However, rather than defining force science in terms of electromagnetism or gravity, it is an object whose velocity cannot be modified. Thus, if velocity cannot be modified, the acceleration will always be zero. This hypothesizes a theory that both an immovable object and an unstoppable force could have accelerations equaling to zero, proving that they both are the same thing observed from different perspectives. According to the theory of general relativity, energy and mass are interchangeable, hence they are different forms of the same thing. Based on this equation, it is not possible because infinite mass will require infinite energy. Therefore, by ignoring gravity, if these two unacceleratable and indefinitely large objects travel towards each other and collide, they would just pass through each other without having any impact on each other. This is because, as per our definition, their velocity cannot be changed. To be unstoppable, the force may require all sources of energy from the Earth. As a result, all sources of radiation, along with the mass of the Earth in its condensed state, will be drained away. Hence, nothing would be left to create or resurrect the immovable object. On the other hand, if the immovable object is taken into consideration first, then it will need the whole mass of our planet, along with every scrap of radiation that is regenerated into mass, leaving out no more energy available to create force. At any given time, only one of the two can exist. Immovable objects and unstoppable force both are interchangeable and meet at the same location. For example, if an arrow is shot with a torque of 30 pounds from a bow, it will continue on its route. The arrow will slow down proportionately by air and other obstructions to the force exerted. If this same arrow is shot with a torque of 45 pounds instead of 30, it will go 50% further or penetrate 50% deeper. But if the arrow has unlimited torque, then the result will change. Thus, when an unstoppable force with unlimited torque collides with an immovable object with infinite mass, only one solution exists. The immovable item will be relocated. Because the immovable object has no force holding it in place. The infinite force will keep on pushing the immovable object regardless of its infinite mass. Thus, the so-called immovable item is not immovable anymore. To conclude the answer to this paradox, there are no such things as irresistible forces and immovable objects, and neither can exist simultaneously. In the universe, both these elements simultaneously exist. Time is an irresistible force that cannot be stopped. It never stops and can move faster or slower in space, depending on gravity. Similarly, The black hole is an immovable object, as its gravity is so powerful that it can delay time in comparison to the rest of the universe. The mass of such a black hole is infinite. They continuously travel through space and time. Hence, time being the irresistible force wins over the black hole, which is our immovable object. Despite this philosophical paradox being as old as mankind, philosophers are still trying to get some thorough answers. The question has been framed so cleverly that the irresistible force and the immovable object thus seem similar. We hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to share it with your friends to submerge them into this philosophical paradox. Subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any of our videos on such interesting topics.